Okay, that looks like the right piece. So you need to apply it to this side?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to go through it kind of roughly, but just so you understand the overall process. And let's see. Okay. Yeah, so with polyframe on, I can see that the front side is quads, but the back side, I guess, where it's holes that have been closed over, is triangulated. And so with that kind of surface, when you apply a alpha, it will be quite distorted. So to load in my alpha, I hold down Control, which is masking. Then what I would do, and I've already done it actually, but you would then just import your grayscale image of the texture that you want, and you would then select that texture. And then what you want to make sure you do is you have this one set to rectangle or drag rectangle. If you have it set to like dots or color spray, it's going to be kind of turning your alpha into like a weird brush. But what you want is rectangle or drag rectangle, and that allows you to actually move it out and move it around the space. Now at the moment it appears as a blur because of our topology, because of this triangulated surface. You really can't tell what the heck's going on with it. Oh wait a second. So yeah, so if I got it set to rectangle and I drag it out, you can kind of see in the preview it looks promising, but when you set it, because of that funny topology, it's very blurred. So what we need to do is to Dynamesh the whole thing. So geometry, Dynamesh, switch our blur off. Let's set this to 400, hit Dynamesh. And our active point count is currently 200,000. So let's see what happens when we Dynamesh. Okay, so I Dynameshed it, the active point count dropped, and we have a quad surface. But what I noticed is that on the front side, I think we've lost quite a bit of detail. So if that happens, you just go back a step to before you Dynameshed. And let's just increase the resolution a bit. So let's say 600 and Dynamesh it again. Okay, so it's lost a little bit of detail. It's not too bad. But let's just go a little bit higher just to try and retain as much as possible. Okay, cool. And if we switch to the other side, you can see it looks all right. But then what we want to do really is just test how nicely that texture goes down. It might still be a little bit blurry. So again, I'm going to hold down Control, drag it across the model. And it's better, but it is still quite blurry. So what I'm going to do is, rather than re-Dynameshing it, I'm just going to divide it. So currently we have 260,000 points. If I hit this divide button, it increases the topology. So now we're at 1 million, which is quite high. But in order to get that detail, we probably need it to be relatively high. You see it's a lot clearer now?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what you're going to want to do is, just use masking. Let me just see if that control drag one is suitable or not. Yeah, so yeah, you're just going to have to figure out like your crop and stuff. And if you don't want to warp it, you need to select is it rectangle? Let's see. There's one that you can press where it doesn't allow you to warp it. Which one is it? Oh, it might be. Oh, this one. Okay. Yeah. So if you're worried about warping the texture, rather than having mask pen, select mask square, and then re-import your alpha, and it will mean that you can't accidentally like warp the shape if that's something that you want to retain. The only other issue you might have is obviously in order to cover that whole surface you have to make it quite large. I don't know, you might want to create a pattern that tiles smaller, for example. But yeah, so basically, yeah, you can apply that alpha mask. Let's just do this. I'm holding down space to move it, so I'm like dragging out with just control and drag, and then if I want to move it I hold down space, and that allows you to reposition it. And then if you want to invert the mask, you just control click. I'm doing a screen recording so you can watch this back, by the way. If you control click, you can invert the mask, so depending on, you know, the grey areas are masked and the white areas are unmasked, but if you want to invert that you just control click. And then what's really important to do is look at the other side of your model, because that's actually also got the masking effect applied. So what you're going to want to do is use more masking to like protect those areas. So what you might want to do is like a mask curve, and then that will allow you to, basically everything to the right hand side of this line is going to be masked. So if you like get it in the right position and release, it will mask everything coming in this direction. Yeah. So at the moment you've just got these areas, these little light grey areas unmasked, and the rest of your object is masked. And then what you can do, there's a variety of ways you can work with this masking. You can either just like take one of the brushes and begin to like sculpt,
create topology.
Yeah, sculpt the topology in. Or what you might want to do is, let me just undo that. Let's move back a bit.
This tool is so useful. The drag history.
Yeah.
it's so helpful, because I think if you work visually, kind of it really helps you to know how many steps you just need to go back rather than read them.
Yeah. And what I always do is, you know, you have your subtools are almost the same as layers in Zbrush. So if I'm about to do something and I'm not sure if it's going to work, I just duplicate my subtool, and I'll have like, and I'll normally rename it, and I'll rename it like safekeeping or something, and that's my one that's like before I've possibly fucked it up. So I've got that as like a backup, and then I work on the duplicate of it. So that's another good way to kind of, or just to have multiple iterations of something in one space. So yeah, use those subtools as kind of layers to have multiple pieces kind of at a time. So yeah, you could use the brush, or if you go into deformation, this deformation menu, you've got, for example, inflate, and it's just controlled with a slider. So you could kind of, yeah, just quite quickly use that inflate tool to, you know, bring out the masked areas, if you see what I mean. What else could you do? Yeah, you could also use like the move feature. So if we just zoom out a bit, I'm just unlocking it and I'm just telling it to go on this top surface here. So with the move, let me just navigate a bit better. Again, you could just use the arrows. Oh, sorry, I need to lock it again. Yeah, you could just use like the arrow to pull the surface up or down. So there's a few ways you can kind of interact with that masking, depending on what effect you're going for. And then when you're happy with it, you can just take off the mask by control dragging. Yeah, and then maybe like mask another side and just start masking each area. I would suggest doing like a surface at a time. And then,
Right.
yeah, and then if you want to just, I don't know how you want your pieces to be, but have you used the brushes much?
I tried working. So the other question that I was going to ask is because to trim off the sphere that I kind of imprinted on the scan, I used the trim,
Yeah.
and that left like really harsh corners, so I couldn't. Yeah, I was wondering how would I smooth it out, because I know there's a smooth brush.
Yeah, so your smooth brush, once you've dynameshed, should be quite reactive. So like I'm using the smooth brush now. Before, when you had a triangulated surface, it maybe wasn't quite as like,
I found that when I was using brushes, it was destroying the scan from the other side.
okay, yeah. So what you can do is yeah, there's a couple of reasons that could happen. It could have been because before this topology was quite different from the topology on the back. So when you were doing stuff on this side, it was like super impacting the other side. Now that you've dynameshed it, it shouldn't affect it as much. If it still is, what you can do is switch on something called back face mask. So let's say with your brush, let's see if there's an area that will show this. If I let's see if I let me just try and mess up the other side.
Yeah, I've used actually this brush and it was kind of just sucking it in
Yeah,
from the
I think I need to go on like a thin
so it was
area.
kind of pulling.
Oh, right here. So say here where it's like really pulled it from the other side. What you need to do is go to brush, auto masking, and then this back face mask. Yeah. And when you have that switched on, it should stop it from affecting the other side. If it's really thin, like here, like that's very thin, it might still affect it. Actually, it's not too bad. But on other areas, it should really stop it from affecting the top side. But just keep in mind that you have to switch back face mask for every different brush you use. So at the moment, back face masking is turned on for the clay build-up brush. But if I then switched over to a different one,
I would need to reset it.
Yeah, you'd need to reset it. It wouldn't be turned on. Yeah. And as you're using the brushes, you'll see that the topology will start to kind of warp. And let me just show you. If say you really warp it like this, so I've just used the inflate brush, and you see it's really kind of smashed up the topology. You know, it looks pretty crazy. To stop that from happening, you just need to re-dynamesh. So if I go back to geometry dynamesh, switch it off and back on, it will re-dynamesh that surface, and then you can continue sculpting it. Let's just.
So with dynamesh, that's kind of what I not quite understood between subdividing it and dynameshing. So does dynamesh works only on the areas that it needs to work, or
no? Dynamesh will go across the whole. Will go across the whole model. Dividing is dividing is just like increasing what's already there. But if you like damage your surface and then divide, it's not going to fix it. If I press divide now, it's not fixing it, it's just adding more. Whereas if I re-dynamesh it, let me just show you. Why is it not doing it? Oh dear, what's happened here? I think I accidentally pressed a stupid button and now it's doing something I don't want it to do. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, so now when I Dynamesh it fixes it so I can continue sculpting on those areas. So it goes from being this kind of like fragmented mess to being re-Dynameshed, and then it's you can continue working on it. The only thing I'm noticing is that re-Dynameshing is causing the detail to drop? No, it's not actually affecting it too much. So every time you're using brushes and it starts to get a bit screwy, just Dynamesh, and then you can continue working on it with no problem. Yeah.
Okay.
And in terms of getting rid of these kind of lines, it's just going to be a combination of different brushes. So I quite like using the flatten brush. And then generally you do it with quite a lot of like small taps, is just to like take the clay away. So you can begin to, and use it in combination with then also smoothing afterwards. But it's like quite a nice way to,
around.
Yeah, and I would suggest get the shape how you want it and then apply the alphas, because otherwise all you're going to be doing is like smearing your alphas away. But so try and get the form how you want. And if you get weird stuff like, you see there's a slight kind of crease here. Again, you just want to, it's where the topology is being moved. So even little creases like that, just re-Dynamesh it. It will get rid of that and you can continue working on it. Yeah?
Okay.
And
that's very...
This area here, the reason that's weird is because there was really thin, like a thin little sheet or some kind of weird thin little part here. Which is why it's kind of gone weird. So you're gonna want to get rid of that. And again, you can get rid of that with masking. So if you use the masking pen, switch off the alpha. Yeah, if you mask it and then use mask alt to get rid of. Sorry, it's quite tricky because it's so thin. And then also going to use lasso, and I'm using lasso just to take away the masking that went on areas that I don't want to get rid of. So you're always kind of like navigating around. Okay, and then what you can do is go subtool, split, split mask points. It will pull it into a separate subtool, which you can then switch on or off.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in your subtool that's your actual model, if you then Dynamesh, it will close that hole over. Yeah. And then you can just carry on like working to like blend it in, basically. Obviously I did that masking and deleting a little bit haphazardly, but if you spend a bit more time on it,
I can finesse with it.
Yeah, exactly. And what you might want to do is, when you've got your actual big tree, is just to have your tree there as a separate subtool around the thing that you're creating, so you can just get it to match nicely, if you get what I mean. You can have, kind of be working on it in situ, so you know how it's looking. I think, is there anything else you kind of want to get to grips with in ZBrush that I could...
There's one question. When I was using the trim tool, and I would trim it sometimes, and the opposite of what I was trying to trim would disappear, and I was wondering why would that be happening?
Are you talking about this trim brush?
Yeah.
Yeah. So firstly, there's like, it's really confusing because you've got like clip curve, slice curve, and trim curve, and they kind of do the same thing, but they all do it in a slightly different way. I generally use trim curve, okay, and it's dependent on if you drag from left to right or right to left. So if I'm
Right.
holding Control Shift and I drag from left to right, it will cut whatever is above my line where the grey shadowing is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I drag from right to left, it cuts whatever's below the line where the black shadow is.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, if you're holding down Control Shift and you, whilst holding them down, also hold space, you can, oh shit, sorry.
Move it.
Yeah, you can move it. So yeah, that's probably why it was cutting away the bit that you didn't want it to.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That explains it, because I was trying to figure out why would it do it, and I just couldn't.
Yeah. I know, I love ZBrush, but it's really not, it really doesn't make things easy sometimes. It's like with the buttons. There's like, with this polyframe button, you can click that button, and then on top of it, there's these two smaller buttons, and it's just like, why? But
what do they do?
so it switches on polyframe, and then you can say if you want to have the lines on, or the fill color on, or both.
Oh.
So it's just, yeah, it's pretty nuts, really. But it does serve a purpose, but it does make things just a little bit tricky if you're not sure why that's happening.
Right. Okay, that kind of makes me, yeah, that slightly makes more sense now. Wonderful. And one other silly question, which I tried to find it online, but I only could find it explained on the Windows computer, and I couldn't figure out how to do it for me.
Yeah.
So like UI arrangement. I think I can see it with you as well. Oh no, it's not like with you. So some of the tools are cut off and I can't access them. So for instance, I don't see active points, and the buttons like on the left side are really big, and I can't access what's below. I think my last button that I can see on the right side is poly frame,
Okay.
and I can't see anything beneath. So I was wondering, how do I fix that?
If you're working on a laptop, you're going to have to adjust your screen resolution. Make your screen resolution higher, so that everything, and I mean, when I'm working on my laptop in ZBrush, I basically set my screen resolution so that the software fits it, and then as soon as I'm stopped working on ZBrush, I return it to the normal screen res.
Okay.
Do you know how to do that?
No, but I can try to figure out. And is it in system preferences then?
Yeah, it should be in system preferences. I don't have my laptop close to hand,
Okay.
but you can do it in there, and there will be a resolution where ZBrush interface will fit and you can see everything. But it will just mean that like your browser will be super small text, so you just have to switch it back when you're done in ZBrush.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah. We're just trying to figure out how to do that, and I just couldn't find it. But yeah, I'll figure that out if I need to change the resolution.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's it for a moment.